I'll start on the intro.
Yeah.
Okay. So our next speaker is Dave Cliffe of PagerDuty with a talk called Best Practices for When S*IT Hits the Fan. That's what it says on the website. But it's discussing the outage practices of the company that we rely on to let us know when there's an outage in our own environment, PagerDuty. From his bio, Dave is an engineer who has adopted a more peaceful role as Sherpa on the product team at PagerDuty, a company whose sole goal is to make the lives of DevOps engineers everywhere a calmer, sanity-filled reality. Before PagerDuty, Dave worked in cloud computing at Microsoft on the Windows Azure team. Frequently, he wonders which is scarier, being an on-call engineer responsible for an outage or being a parent. To help us decide, let's welcome Dave Cliffe.
Other parents here? Are there other parents? Yeah, all right. Yeah, honestly, you guys know where I'm coming from. So, I'm from PagerDuty. How many people have not heard of PagerDuty before? A few. Okay, great. PagerDuty, we wake people up. And so incident response is kind of a thing for us. We like to be part of the process and part of the solution, hopefully. But probably one of the first things you noticed about me in getting up here, other than the rather bright colored shirt that I'm required to wear, is this really hideous and irritating mustache that I'm sporting. How many people are participating in Movember? Any Movembers? Okay, we got a few. Good stuff. Yeah. So PagerDuty is very much into Movember, and we are participating, so it is a big deal around our company in particular. How PagerDuty works effectively, we sit between your monitoring systems and your people. And so the idea is that when events fire off from your monitoring tools or from whatever you need to effectively wake you up, PagerDuty has the magic to figure out who's on call, to figure out if escalation is required, and then subsequently wake people up. And so from an incident management perspective, and really when hits the fan stuff, honestly, our the way that we approach it, and the way that we are involved in the process, we really want to be thought leaders in this space. We want to work with the best of the best companies, understand best practices across the industry, and help people to really move their incident response forward. And so I was trying to figure out how I could establish credibility with you guys as in incident response. And I figured, well, the first place to start is obviously talking about the trustworthiness of beards. And so what I'm really trying to go for as part of Movember is the cop mustache. This is the Burt Reynolds, all right? So if I sport the sunglasses, you can see I look a little bit more like a 70s cop. So I'm working towards working my way west here, but I see there are a couple of philosophers out there. So kudos to you, sir. You are considerably more trustworthy than I am. Now, where we're coming at again from PagerDuty's perspective, we're in a bit of a unique place here, right? In that. Traditionally, these sorts of talks, these incident response talks, you'd see a guy in a crew cut come up here, who has rich military background and, can speak in detail about how they do incident response, and you can effectively take that back as sysadmins, apply it to the way that you run operations, and that's great. Or, you get somebody from FEMA up here, who talks about these large natural disasters and what kind of the life cycle looks like of their response, and be able to take those practices back. Again, I am neither of those things. I am not. I don't have the crew cut even. I could have at least prepared that way, but fundamentally, where PagerDuty is coming from is that we are in a unique position from an IT operations perspective. We are talking to early adopters, kind of the best of the best tech companies. We have 6,000 plus customers. They range from really large shops like Microsoft all the way down to really small 1- and 2-man IT operations shops. But the most interesting thing is that our customer base, like Microsoft, GitHub, Heroku, Instagram, all these like high tech companies that are really on kind of the bleeding edge and really start pushing the IT operations space forward. These guys are, we're learning from them as well. And so what I hope to bring in this talk in particular is our perspective on what we're seeing. What are some of the trends that we're seeing in how people do incident response at an IT operations shop? What kind of things that you can learn from them, and what kind of things we've learned from them, and as well as what trends we're seeing from just the fact that they are our customers and we can kind of see their usage. So it's kind of a unique position for us to be in. So I hope you get a lot out of this from that perspective. In order to start, I just want to kind of frame incident response in a very basic way, and we can kind of talk through it, and we'll go through these sections in the session in particular. The first area that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on is triage. And the way we think about triage is really taking these events that are coming out of your monitoring systems, out of your config management systems, and basically organizing them and correlating them and understanding kind of the origination point of an outage and how you know early on that, okay, shit's hitting the fan and it's about to get real in here. And we're not going to talk about triage a ton, but I did want to frame it because I think it's a very, very relevant part, and we'll certainly come back to it from a learning perspective. So where we're going to start from in this talk is really, there's an incident. And whether you're an ITIL shop doing incident management, followed by problem management, or you follow kind of this sort of process, we're going to talk about what can we do as responders. What are the sort of things that we're seeing in the industry, as well as how to move forward beyond that, and how to actually learn and get better and improve over time. And I'm really excited about that second section in particular. But there's a lot that we can share. Let's start about talking about respond first. So I need to start off with the mandatory Sidney Dekker quote, because I think this is just it has to come up in every talk, especially when you're talking about failure. So to understand failure, you need to understand our reactions to failure, and fundamentally, this is just your response and how you organize your response. So where do you start? Well, one of the things that's been the most interesting to me, and where PagerDuty I think has been really impactful on the industry and has been impactful for a lot of our customers, is actually getting a single butt on the line to go work on problems and starting there. Because the number of shops, I kid you not, that come to us and they're starting with, okay, whenever there's an issue, I want to notify 7 people, and those 7 people are going to go kind of work on it collaboratively and somehow go off and resolve the issue together. And fundamentally, it's just that doesn't scale the long term. You're going to have a terrible on-call experience for all of your operations staff. All of your development teams. It's just it's an awful place to be. And so it's really encouraging to me to start looking at. I looked at basically all the data from October for our set of customers. We sent out about almost 5 million alerts in October across approximately 2.8 million incidents that were effectively opened in our system. And this is actually a logarithmic scale, so I apologize for throwing a little bit of a wrench in your data analysis right away. But 81.5% resolved by a single person. And then, of course, on the far right here, there's an incident that was actually touched by 28 people. And this is 28 people out of like a 42-person shop. So this is like 2/3. Shit hit the fan there, honestly. Exciting stuff. But this is kind of the first really thing that's really excited me about being involved with PagerDuty is starting to see some of this transition. And so if you're not, if your immediate response to handling events is go wake everybody up because we need as many people involved as we can in order to resolve it quickly, that's just not going to work longer term. And actually, there's some really interesting data that we started to pull about that's kind of mapping the number of people involved in the incident and the amount of time involved, and we'll look at that in a little bit. So one of the, once you get to the point where the single person is involved and they've determined in some way that more people need to be woken up to go work on these issues, what we've found is that the number of customers impacted, the importance of customers, thinking about customers has been really, really paramount to what a lot of these teams are actually measuring. And that's really encouraging for me, honestly, because I care deeply about customers. And so if you're not measuring severity of an incident based on the number of customers impacted and the amount of time that they're impacted, then I hate to say it, but you're doing it wrong, honestly. Like this is so fundamentally important, is that you understand how customers are responding to your system and that you're actually being able to measure that. And so this is one of the things that's really core to us in terms of measuring a Sev1 versus a Sev2 versus a Sev3 incident. Is a Sev2 is effectively 5 or more customers are impacted. A Sev1 actually upgrades when those customers are impacted for 10 minutes or more. And so things escalate quickly. So one of the probably the neatest trends that I've seen in the past little while and is actually applying this concept of incident commander to IT operations. And I think it's actually I've seen this in the InfoSec space for a much longer time, handling CSerts and being involved in that process at Microsoft myself, and seeing what a war room looked like and what people kind of cranking on a large scale security issue looked like. But honestly, I haven't seen it nearly as frequently in kind of just the general IT operations space, and it's something that's a little bit surprising. But it's something that we implemented very, very early on. And the more advanced shops that I talk to, they're the ones who are very much embracing this incident commander concept. How many people are incident commanders themselves? We got a few. All right. You guys don't have crew cuts too. That's cool. Hardly. Yeah. That's right. It's probably a bad idea for everyone involved, honestly. So incident commanders is I think a relatively new thing, but there's a couple of really key parts to what makes a good incident commander. And I think the first of which is obviously organizing collaboration and making sure that they're the ones that are, maybe they're setting up the conference call for you if that's the way that you collaborate. Maybe they're, organizing chat room for this particular issue. Whatever they can do to effectively streamline internal collaboration is a huge part of just getting things moving. And I think actually along those lines, just this concept of they're asking questions, they're pushing things forward. They're very much working to ensure that everyone is working effectively and questions from one area are being answered. And so that whole collaboration piece, I think, has been really key. The next is communication, and what I mean here is actually kind of internal stakeholder communication as well as external customer communication. And this is probably the most important thing that I've seen is having customers aware of what's going on. And having them regularly updated, proactive communications, whatever it takes. The incident commander needs to be responsible for that, and they cannot be the engineer who's trying to fix the issue. The most common thing I see with customers, with engineers on call, is that they're trying to fix the thing as quickly as they can, and they're getting peppered with questions from 5, 6, 7, 8 different people trying to get an update on what the latest status is. And I think really the most significant thing that incident commanders can do is to communicate proactively and regularly with customers, whatever it takes to really shield your responders from that. They don't do the investigation themselves. They're actually offloading that. They don't really even need to know the guts of the system. And probably the title that I've seen for most incident commanders is, they're either on the SRE teams at their company. I've actually seen somebody who's a director of reliability, which I think is a really cool job title. And I'm sure there's probably some more interesting ones that involve Ninja and stuff like that you could really apply to this particular role. the last piece is act, and and it's amazing to me that how hesitant we get in handling issues, and just how scary it is, honestly, to really go off and try to make a change that's going to impact the rest of the customers who might not be yet impacted by something that's going on. And so it is really scary, but it's actually something that I've seen in our own response, honestly, that's probably the most significant thing for really moving things forward. Is they got to make the tough calls. Honestly, you got to have somebody who's got the cojones to basically step up and do that. All right, we're going to do personal anecdote time. June 3rd and 4th. This is a day that will live in infamy for us this past year, honestly. And if you're a PagerDuty customer already, I apologize for this day. We probably reached out to you and contacted you. Because honestly, this was a shit hit the fan moment for us. And one thing that I reference here is the Yerkes-Dodson law. If you haven't seen this before, this is effectively, the fact is that these outage-inducing events, these are wildly complex systems that you guys work on. And fundamentally, you have to understand that fatigue does set in when an incident lasts for, hours at a time. And so that's exactly what we dealt with, honestly. And this is where incident commanders, being able to recognize people aren't maybe the freshest that they need to be, and being able to actually call people out on that, but not in a negative way, I think is kind of a hugely undervalued thing as well. All right, so June 3rd, June 4th. June 3rd, PagerDuty relies on Cassandra as basically our part of our notification pipeline. How many people use Cassandra, distributed data store? Yeah, we got a few. Okay, so yeah, it's a very, very much a core part of our business. It basically backs our entire notifications pipeline, our eventing pipeline as well. And so what we started to see a little bit of instability, some performance related issues, and so it started delaying events coming into our system as well as notifications going out. And what we saw is that this is actually a result of the background repair process that runs regularly. What it's there for is stability, right? I mean, it's a distributed data store. There has to be syncing across the cluster effectively. And so we looked at that. We said, I don't know, maybe we can pause this for a little bit. We knew it was going to have kind of large scale impact. And so we paused the background repair process. And thankfully, things kind of stabilized. We monitored it for the next kind of 3 hours or so. We had a few events in our system that didn't go out on time. We have internal SLAs of sending out alerts within 5 minutes. Our customers very much rely on this, obviously, as fundamentally a critical system in their pipeline. We can't be hanging around to notifications for 30 minutes while you guys are kind of kept in the dark. And so we paused that background process, and the system stabilized. And so we're kind of like, all right, well, this is not, it's not perfect. We're going to test a few things. So we tested a few things to try to figure out. And there's a lot of with Cassandra in particular, and I would love to talk to some of you guys afterwards. There's a lot of tuning and management with Cassandra that I think is not far along. And I think there's the industry in particular is starting to push that a little bit more, but there's a lot that we're learning as we go in order to how to tune it properly for performance. And so we tested a few things. We thought we had a really good mitigation in place should this thing happen again. We were like, all right, well, you know what? Tomorrow morning we'll wake up, we'll come in, get people on board. We're going to restart this process and see what happens. Whoops. So yeah, this is basically the next morning we got in, and we've got our incident commander on board. We've got people ready on chat. We've got a conference bridge that we're ready to jump into. And sure enough, we restart this backup repair process, and things go south in a hurry. And where we started was, we were in a beneficial position in that we actually had collaboration right from the get-go, which was great. But following down the path here, you can see very quickly things escalate. Sev 2 starts, but about roughly 10 minutes later, we get into a Sev 1 state. And all of a sudden, all of our back-end systems start failing in different ways, or just performance degradation. We ended up in a really scary place for a good chunk of time there, where probably 2.5, 3 hours, where things were really touch and go. And I think it was about an hour in when we started making the call. Okay, we've got a bunch of our systems that are effectively not system critical to our notification pipeline, doing on-call handoff notifications. So we started shutting down some of those services, and felt like that was a really good call. It's a low-risk call. A little while later, things really got bad. It got to the point where our incident commander he had to make a really tough call, and I admire him for his ability to do this. But basically, the call was made that we actually need to purge and restart the cluster. And so you can imagine what an impact this is from our business perspective, because not only are we delaying notifications, so we're not sending them out within that 5-minute window. Some are going out within 10, 15 minutes. Others are actually being delayed up to an hour in some cases. But the call was made that we're actually going to purge state. That sucks. And it was a really tough call, and it was absolutely the right call. But the key for all of this, honestly, is that we were constantly communicating with our customers, actually. For the customers that were impacted, we were constantly looking at which accounts, who do we need to reach out to? Which alerts are these actually bound for? Even when we purged state, we basically dumped that to the point where we could actually go back and make sure that in the moment we had our customer support team, we had our account management team, we had the ability to effectively go proactively reach out to customers and say, listen, we're having issues, you're in the dark right now, be aware. I think it was wildly encouraging for our customers, despite the shitty situation that it was. So I think being able to actually make sure that you track the customer impact throughout was hugely valuable to us, and really encouraging for me as an employee of PagerDuty, because it shows how much we care about that. Okay, so jumping into the 3 specific pieces: collaborate, communicate, and act. Collaboration, we've actually worked with Forrester Consulting. We've been doing some polling of the industry effectively, and we're starting to try to share more and more of this as we can, because again, we think we're in a bit of a unique position there. What would you say are the top 3 barriers to better cooperation in regards to the prevention and resolution of IT service problems? And fundamentally, a lot of these are around getting the right person available, getting the right person involved in the situation. And there are a number of ways to do this, honestly, and we've done some more surveying of our customer base, and in particular, how many people use an internal chat system? I should see every single friggin' hand here. Yeah, seriously. It's amazing. So honestly, this whole concept of chat ops, it's real. It's wonderful. Honestly, we use it internally. We use our own chat bot. We've got an interesting mix of customers who are using things from IRC to HipChat to Slack. We have bots that our customers are effectively going off and developing. So Stripe wrote something called the PagerBot. We've got a number of customers, GitHub, who's probably one of the first ones to write some PagerDuty specific stuff into HuBot. And it's really exciting to see that continue to move forward, and people leverage that more and more. On the communication side, this is kind of scary. When an IT service availability or performance problem arises, how are you and your team usually notified when assistance is required? So if you've got people reaching out to you and telling you that you have problems, you probably need to monitor some stuff a little bit better, But honestly, if your customers are the ones that are coming and telling you you're having problems, that's really even not gooder. From a communication perspective and on a communication slide, really not good. One of the things that we've adopted ourselves and that we're seeing really widespread adoption of is status pages. How many people have a status page that they report to their customers with? Wow, I see like 5 hands. All right, maybe 6. Yeah, status pages. This is huge. And statuspage.io is actually one of the partners that we have a first-class integration with, so that your customers can come and effectively subscribe for to know when there are issues. You can use this internally if you want internal stakeholders to know about. If I get Page now, well, actually probably a bad example. I subscribe to updates on other companies' status pages, and I think this is a hugely important thing to make sure that you're very proactive about your communication to customers. That June 3rd, 4th outage was actually the breaking point for us, where we went from, okay, we're going to communicate everything via Twitter, to, yeah, that's just not going to work, and actually formally adopting a status page. So status.pagerduty.com, sign up for it, and you will never, I guarantee you will never receive any communication from us, because we don't go down, doesn't happen, so don't even bother. No, but seriously, do it. All right, the last piece is ACT, and how many people have understand the concept of OODA loops? OODA loops, a few, okay. OODA loops are actually a military background thing, so this is my attempt to actually roll some of that into this session. OODA loops are a really interesting way that we are trying to pivot our investments around the response space. And so what we want to do is, we want to basically provide you the capabilities as users of PagerDuty to observe what you need to observe, make sure that the right data is effectively coming to you, and you're not having to go, okay, there's an incident. All right, I got to go look at this monitoring system. I got to look at the status page for this. I've got to look at the logs here. You shouldn't have to look in 8 different places. And so there's a lot that we're doing to make sure that a lot of that information is becoming apparent to you. The next is Orient, and Orient, it takes into account kind of your previous history. And looking at, what incidents have we had that might be vaguely similar to this in the past? What things about our response in particular, maybe make us more susceptible to handling this in a different way? And so, giving you the tools necessary to actually orient yourself and providing that information to you, run books, those sorts of things, I think are areas that we can really continue to help. Decide is really on you, honestly, and this is whether it's okay, I need to wake somebody new up, or I need to wait for more information to come in. I need to monitor this for another couple of minutes. That's fundamentally, we want to make your decision process as easy as possible. And going back to that graph that I showed earlier about the complexity of issues, the more that we can push some of that decision making from complex into simple and make it kind of more automatic, that's a really key part of where we want to continue to push things forward in this space. All right, and the last is ACT, obviously, and we want to make it super simple to page additional people to get people involved in your systems. Whether that's doing it from chat, where you're likely sitting anyway, via a bot, I think is hugely powerful. Okay, I wrote you a haiku because that's how I roll. So breathe deep, Commander. Your work is done here for now. Incident resolved. So we've gotten to the point where resolution has happened, okay? And again, going back to what I mentioned about incident command, it's not about understanding the root cause. It's about mitigating the issue and getting the system moving again, okay? And this is actually a really critical piece. You will continue to work on it and understand root cause, because you want to understand that the issue is not going to come up again 2 minutes later or 2 hours later. But But fundamentally, doing that in the moment and trying to go really deep and understand root causes is not what you need. So the incident commander has to be militant about understanding the symptoms and understanding how to mitigate the symptoms and get the system back into a reasonable working order. And then you can kind of work from there. All right, let's talk about learn, because this is the part that I think is really hugely undervalued and in the industry right now. There's a number of things that you can learn from when it comes to incident response. The first is you can analyze your individual events, so you can understand if, did something that I received, was it actually actionable? Did it provide me the context that I need? Did it actually point towards a problem that was coming? And being able to go back through and look at the individual events that you're receiving, I think is something that I really don't see out of a lot of companies, to be completely honest. But we're starting to see people care more and more about this, and they care about it in the context of, for you guys on call, like it sucks ass if you receive if 80% of the alerts that you're receiving are completely non-actionable things that aren't relevant. Like, ooh, disk utilization over 80%. Haha, that's awesome. Like, I'm not going to do anything with that. Close. Like, you need to go back through and analyze that stuff regularly. And one of the companies I was talking to recently that I think is really far along in this space, they effectively make it such that any alert that they receive via PagerDuty, the on-call engineer can actually hit the snooze button for it. So they can't resolve it, but they can hit the snooze button for it and say, all right, it's 3 a.m. right now. I don't really need to look at this right now. Snooze until morning. But the assertion is that there is an action that's taken from every one of these, whether it's, oh yeah, this actually pointed to a problem and it was helpful, or no, this wasn't actionable and we need to actually go get rid of it right away. And so there's an action step that's taken specifically from that event, which I think is really, really interesting, and something that, from an actionability perspective, that you'll definitely see PagerDuty start to invest in as well. And we did this internally, honestly, in our own analysis. I see people who are basically throw every single incident in PagerDuty into a spreadsheet at the end of the week, their on-call shift, and go back through them with a fine-tooth comb. Should I have received this? Should I have received this? Should I have received this? And that's really cool to see. And you shouldn't have to use Excel in order to do that, to be honest. So that's something we're working on. All right, individual incidents. There's a lot in this space that I'm really excited about. That guys like Allspa from Etsy, Sydney Decker, a ton of research around failure, and really the focus on blameless post-mortem. And I don't want to get into that here, honestly. I think that's an entirely separate 3-hour talk in and of itself. But I think it is really a really fundamental shift in the industry, and it's really been really encouraging seeing people adopt that, because it's something we've been doing within PagerDuty for a while now, making sure that when issues happen, like you don't hindsight bias doesn't come in and say, well, you should have made that decision, you idiot. Like, you're out of here. Like that's just not a conversation that happens. So understanding what was surprising about the incident, like what was it that you just completely didn't expect that was totally off the wall and beyond your understanding of the system, and the way that it was executing. What signal indicated more help, and so how did you get to the point where you decided, okay, I don't know what's going on here, I need this person or I need this team involved. And then how do you work as a team? Honestly, I think that's one of the neatest things about this trend has been the learning about your execution, and the focus being on learning as opposed to being on finger pointing. Remember that failure is an event, not a person. All right, I don't want to touch any more on that, because, like I said, it's a larger topic. But one of the things that where PagerDuty is starting to make investments, and again, we've seen very, very regular customer input on this, is understanding trends in your own operational metrics. And these are 4 very, very basic metrics that if you're not tracking today, you absolutely should be. And it's something that we make easy within our product, but whatever you use, whether it's a competitor, whether it's your own homegrown solution, you should absolutely be tracking these sorts of things. Number of incidents, mean time to repair, mean time to acknowledge, and escalations. And fundamentally, these things, as long as you can kind of slice and dice them across your teams and across your systems, be able to understand, okay, this team is responding quickly, this team is not. Maybe this individual, they had something going on. Understand your on-call process that way. There's a lot that we can learn, and I think this is probably one of the most interesting things that we've started to see in the data. Is that lower mean time to acknowledge actually means lower work time. And you're probably thinking, well, yeah, if you acknowledge the incident more quickly, then of course your overall resolution time will go down, right? That's just math. But this is actually pointing to more of a cultural thing. This is actually saying that if your team is better at responding and responding quickly to issues, that you'll actually resolve things a whole lot faster. So we're actually seeing 10-minute act time decreasing, meaning 12 minutes of time. So you're actually making time up, and which is really interesting. And so if you look at the numbers for PagerDuty's teams, our act times are actually across all of our teams 1 to 2 minutes, to be completely honest. Really, really quick, and that's been really encouraging to see. That as it grows. But one of the scariest things, honestly, is when I see trend graphs like this. This is the mean time to acknowledge, and you can see it spiking upwards over time. You know what this means? This means that your team is getting slower to respond. It means your team is probably overloaded. It means your team is probably burning out. And that's scary. That's something that you absolutely need to jump on and combat quickly, because it's something that can effectively spiral completely out of control, to the point where your incident response is, your customers are going to be very upset soon. Another trend that I wanted to point out that has been, again, really fascinating is moving beyond these kind of basic metrics, number of incidents, MTTR, MTTA, and actually focusing on your own engineer's experience. So if you're a manager and you're managing an on-call team here, I highly encourage you to start thinking about their experience first and see the impact that has on focusing on things like, when are they interrupted? What's the impact on their productivity for that? There was a fascinating session by a guy from Etsy on the quantification of the on-call experience and the sleep analysis that they did effectively. Analyzing sleep patterns for your on-call shift. We want to understand how this impacts your productivity. If you get paged at 3 a.m., does that mean, I'm not going to come in until noon the next day? So, half work day. What is fundamentally the impact? And by actually focusing on these metrics, you will drive down the amount of downtime that you have. You will create a better customer experience by effectively just focusing on your team, making sure that they are effective. All right, I'm running out of time and it's lunchtime, so I'm going to summarize really quick and then we're going to go eat. Does that sound like a good plan? Or what? All right, key takeaways. So understand customer impact. Incident commanders, they are for real. You should absolutely set up a rotation. Have a separate set of maybe more senior engineers who are maybe more familiar with the system, kind of in a breadth perspective, and get them focused on your incident response. Learn from your failures, and then fundamentally measure different kinds of metrics in order to actually move you forward. That's all I got, and other than a picture of Burt Reynolds.
All right. If you have any questions, we can probably take one or two. If you'd like to to speak, come up to the microphone.
Yeah, or I'm happy to take them up front if that's better for you. I don't think I can pull that off. I don't know. I should wear the sunglasses the rest of the day, though.
All right. Well, let's thank our speaker one last time. And
Wrap for lunch.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone.